The notification lit up my phone screen like an accusation. Joint account balance, $47,232.18, down from $198,000 just yesterday. My fingers trembled as I checked the transaction history. A single withdrawal of $150,000 marked funeral expenses, Thompson family. I'm Kiara, and until this moment, I thought I understood the meaning of family loyalty. The screen blurred as I scrolled through the details, again and again, willing the numbers to change. "Mark?" I called out, my voice echoing through our modern downtown loft. "Mark, get in here now." The sound of his footsteps from his home office seemed deliberately slow. He appeared in the doorway, beer bottle in hand, wearing that infuriating expression of practiced innocence I'd grown to recognize over our 12 years together. "Did you authorize a withdrawal of $150,000 from our joint account?" He took a long pull from his bottle. "Dad's funeral arrangements needed to be handled. Bethany's taking care of it." Bethany. The name tasted bitter in my mouth. "Your sister who declared bankruptcy last year? That Bethany. She knows what Mom wants. She's good at organizing these things." I pulled up our bank's website on my laptop, turning the screen toward him. "Show me the invoices, the funeral home's details, anything." "Jesus, Kiara, my father just died. Can we not do this now?" "Your father died 3 weeks ago. The memorial service was modest. I was there, remember? So explain to me why your sister needed 6 figures for funeral expenses today." Mark's jaw tightened. He set his beer down with deliberate care on our glass coffee table. No coaster. Another small act of defiance. "You don't understand how these things work in established families," he said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought I was being difficult. "There are obligations, traditions like emptying joint accounts without discussing it with your spouse. The money's going to good use. Mom needs— Helen lives in a fully paid-off house with a generous pension and life insurance payout. Try again." His phone buzzed. I caught Bethany's name on the screen before he quickly turned it face down. The gesture told me everything I needed to know. "You know what? Don't bother explaining." I closed my laptop with a snap. "I'll call the bank myself." "Don't." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "You'll just upset Mom. She's been through enough." I looked down at his fingers, pressed against my skin, then back at his face. "Let go of me." He released me immediately, running his hand through his hair instead. "Look, I know how this seems, but Bethany has a plan. The money's an investment." "An investment," I laughed, and the sound was ugly, even to my own ears. "Like her juice bar franchise, or that cryptocurrency scheme last summer. This is different. She's found a real opportunity." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. You know what the real investment was, the one I made thinking you and I were partners, that we made decisions together. That's the one I'm worried about right now." His phone buzzed again, and again. He glanced at it nervously. "I need to take this." "Of course you do." I stood up, gathering my things. "Tell Bethany I said hi, and that fraud looks terrible on a resume." "Where are you going?" "To see my lawyer, then my accountant. Then maybe I'll stop by and have a chat with Helen about these mysterious funeral expenses." I paused at the door. "You know what the worst part is, Mark? I actually thought you were different from them." His phone kept buzzing as I walked out. I didn't look back to see if he answered it. Some calls you just have to let go to voicemail. Helen's dining room felt like a museum of passive-aggressive warfare. Crystal glasses clinked too loudly. Silverware scraped against plates with deliberate precision. And Bethany's new diamond tennis bracelet caught the light every time she reached for her wine. "The market's been absolutely brutal lately," Bethany said, cutting into her filet mignon. "But some of us know how to spot real opportunities, right, Mark?" I stabbed my fork into a roasted potato. 3 days since the money vanished, and here we sat, playing happy family, while my lawyer's voicemails went unanswered. "Speaking of opportunities," Helen chimed in, "Bethany's been telling me about this wonderful investment she's found. Something about luxury condos in Miami?" My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. Luxury condos, that's what the funeral expenses are funding. Mark's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing hard. A warning. Oh, darling, Bethany laughed, that practice society laugh she'd perfected. You're still hung up on that. The money's already tripled. I could show you the projections. Show me the bank statements instead. The room went silent. Helen's fork clattered against her plate. Kiara, Mark muttered. Not now. When then? When the money's gone? When she's moved on to the next scheme? I turned to Helen. Did you know about this? Did you approve using your husband's funeral to fund your daughter's real estate gambling? Helen dabbed her lips with her napkin, hands trembling slightly. Bethany has always had excellent business sense, just like her father. Her father built a legitimate company from the ground up. She builds pyramid schemes and maxes out credit cards. That's enough. Mark's voice cut through the tension. You're upset about the money, I get it, but this isn't the time or place. When is it ever? I pushed back from the table. Your father's been dead 3 weeks, and she's already using his memory to fund her next disaster. But I'm the one being inappropriate. Bethany set down her wine glass with exaggerated care. Some of us understand family loyalty, Kiara. Some of us weren't raised by wolves in a trading pit. Better wolves than vultures. Girls, please. Helen pleaded. We're all grieving. We shouldn't. Grieving. I laughed. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like business as usual. Bethany needs money. Mark enables her, and you pretend everything's fine while she bleeds us all dry. That's not fair, Mark started, but I cut him off. What's not fair is finding out my husband gave away our savings without even discussing it. What's not fair is watching your sister parade around in new jewelry while claiming she needs funeral expenses. What's not fair is I stopped, something clicking into place. The bracelet. When did you get it, Bethany? She touched it reflexively. What? The tennis bracelet. It's new. When did you buy it? I don't see how that's any of your... Yesterday, I pressed. After the bank transfer, maybe? The flush creeping up her neck told me everything. Kiara. Mark's voice held a warning. Don't. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. I want the money back by Monday, all of it, or I'm going to the police. You wouldn't dare, Bethany hissed. We're family. No, we're not. We're just people stuck in the same dysfunction. And I'm done playing along. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Helen's soft sobs, Bethany's angry whispers, and Mark's footsteps following me. Wait, he called as I reached my car. Please, we can figure this out. I turned to face him, suddenly tired. Can we? Because from where I stand, you've already chosen your side, and it's not with me. That's not true. I love you. Love isn't enough when there's no trust left. I got into my car, rolling down the window for one last word. Tell your sister she has until Monday. After that, family loyalty won't matter anymore. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Bethany in the doorway, her diamond bracelet glinting like a promise of war to come. Some people say blood is thicker than water. They forget the rest of the saying. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And I was done drowning in either. The email from Bethany's former assistant arrived at 3 a.m., but I didn't see it until morning. Subject line: What you should know about the Thompson Family Trust. I sat in my parked car outside Lucas's investment firm, reading through the attached documents for the 4th time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. You look like hell, Lucas said, sliding into the passenger seat. No offense. Read this. I handed him my phone. Bethany's been doing this for years. The funeral expenses, that's just the latest scam. Lucas scrolled through the documents, his expression darkening. Shell companies, fake invoices. She's been bleeding your father-in-law's business since before he died. And Helen knew. She had to have known. The betrayal tasted like copper in my mouth. She's been signing off on these consulting fees for 3 years. What about Mark? That's what I need to find out. I started the car. Want to crash a brewery board meeting? The drive to Mark's Craft Brewery took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to rehearse what I'd say, how I'd handle his inevitable denials. But nothing prepared me for walking into his office and finding Bethany there, seated behind his desk like she owned it. "Well," she smiled, "this is awkward." Mark stood by the window, hands in his pockets. "Kiara, you can't just barge in here." "Actually, I can." I dropped the printed emails on the desk. "As a major investor in this brewery, I have every right to ask why you're paying consulting fees to a shell company owned by your sister." Bethany's smile didn't waver. "I provide valuable services." "Like what?" "Embezzlement advice, tips on how to forge signatures." "That's enough," Mark snapped. "You're making accusations without understanding." "I understand perfectly." I turned to face him. "Your father built this brewery from nothing. He trusted you to run it, to protect it. Instead, you're letting her drain it dry, just like she's done with everything else." "The brewery needed capital," Bethany cut in. "Dad was too traditional, too cautious. I found investors." "You found loan sharks," I corrected. "I've seen the contracts. How much do you owe them now? $500,000? More?" Mark's face went pale. "What loans?" Finally, a crack in Bethany's facade. "Mark, don't listen to her. She's trying to turn you against me." "The money from our account," I pressed on. "It wasn't for funeral expenses or Miami condos, was it? It was to cover the interest payments you couldn't make." "Is that true?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper. Bethany stood up, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Everything I did for this family. To protect our legacy." "By stealing from it?" I laughed. "Some legacy." "Get out." Her voice turned to ice. "Both of you, this is my office now." "Your office?" Mark stepped forward. "Since when?" "Since Dad signed over his controlling shares to me last month." She pulled out a document from the desk drawer. "Check the date, it's all legal." I grabbed the paper before Mark could reach it. The signature at the bottom made my stomach turn. "This is dated 3 days after he went into the coma." The silence in the room was deafening. "You forged it," Mark said slowly. "You forged our father's signature while he was dying." "I did what needed to be done." Bethany's mask finally cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. The loans were coming due. The investors were threatening to go public. I had to protect us. "Us?" I stepped closer to her. "Or yourself." She reached for her phone. "Security will escort you out." "No need." I headed for the door, then turned back to Mark. "Your father trusted you with his life's work. What would he say if he could see you now?" "Kiara, wait. Monday's deadline still stands." I cut him off. "But now it's not just our money I want back. It's everything she's stolen, every penny." "Or what?" Bethany called after me. I paused in the doorway. "Or I send these documents to the FBI. Your choice." The last thing I saw was Mark sinking into a chair, head in his hands, while Bethany frantically dialed her phone. "Some fires you light just to watch them burn. Others, you light to clear the ground for something new to grow." The hotel bar was empty, except for Lucas and me, sharing a bottle of overpriced Cabernet at 2 in the afternoon. My overnight bag sat at my feet, a silent admission that I couldn't go home. "Not yet." "You should see the texts he's sending," I said, sliding my phone across the bar, like I'm the one destroying his family. Lucas scrolled through the messages, his jaw tightening. He's scared. Men like Mark, they're used to managing problems with money or charm. When that doesn't work, they lash out. I took another sip. "Did I tell you Helen called? Said I was being cruel, that family matters should stay private." As if privacy is what they're really worried about. Speaking of privacy, Lucas pulled out his tablet, opening his email. "Remember that audit I ran on the brewery's financials? It gets worse." The spreadsheet he showed me made my hands go cold. "These transfer dates, they match your father-in-law's hospital stays. Every time he was admitted, money moved through Bethany's shell companies." Lucas's voice was gentle. "They were counting on him dying, Kiara. They needed him to die." The wine turned sour in my mouth. Mark knew. He had to have known. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a new message from Mark. Coming home tonight? We need to talk. Don't, Lucas warned, reading over my shoulder. Whatever explanation he has, it's not worth. My phone rang. Mark's face appeared on the screen. Put it on speaker, Lucas said. I answered. What do you want, Mark? Where are you? His voice was strained. I went by your office, but they said you haven't been in all day. I'm safe. That's all you need to know. Kiara, please. Bethany explained everything. The loans, the transfers. It wasn't what you think. Dad knew about most of it. He approved. While he was in a coma? The words felt like glass in my throat. Did he approve that too? Silence stretched between us. That's what I thought. I finished my wine. How long did you wait? After they put him on the ventilator, how long before Bethany forged his signature? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You needed him gone to cover the embezzlement, the loans, everything. My voice didn't shake anymore. Tell me I'm wrong. Another silence, then softer. Come home, we can fix this. Fix what? The fraud? The theft? Or the fact that you watched your sister steal your father's company while he was dying? I did it for us, he said. The brewery was failing. The debts. Don't you dare make this about us. The rage finally broke through. You did it for yourself, because you were too weak to stand up to Bethany, too afraid to admit you'd failed at running the business your father built. That's not fair. Neither was stealing my money to pay off your loan sharks. Neither was lying to me for 3 years about where the brewery's profits were going. I caught Lucas's warning look and took a breath. You have until Monday. After that, everything goes to the FBI. You'd really do that? Destroy your own family? You're not my family anymore. You're just the man who helped his sister rob his dying father. I hung up before he could respond. The phone immediately lit up with texts. Please, we can work this out. Don't throw away 12 years. Lucas touched my arm. You okay? No. I stood up, grabbing my bag. But I will be. Can I crash at your place tonight? Guest room's already made up. He signed the bar tab. What's your next move? I deleted Mark's messages without reading them. First, I call my lawyer. Then I start documenting everything. The transfers, the forged signatures, the shell companies. And then I burn it all down. I headed for the door, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Sometimes, the only way to save something is to destroy it first. Behind me, my phone kept buzzing with Mark's desperate attempts to maintain control. But some calls don't deserve an answer. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness. And some fires need to burn until there's nothing left but truth in the ashes. The cafe where Mark suggested we meet was neutral territory, halfway between his family's world and mine. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a coffee gone cold. His brewery's financial records spread across the table like a confession. You look tired, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Haven't slept much. He pushed a document toward me. This is everything. The loans, the transfers, all of it. You were right about Bethany. I didn't touch the papers. Why now? Because you deserve the truth. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. And because she's threatening to sell the brewery. Of course. It wasn't conscience that brought him here. It was desperation. She can't sell what she stole, I said. Those documents you showed me last week, the ones with your father's forged signature, they're worthless. Try telling that to her buyers. He leaned forward. They're coming tomorrow to finalize the deal. Once they take over, they'll discover the fraud and come after everyone involved. I smiled without humor, including you. His phone buzzed. Bethany's face flashed on the screen. He declined the call. Help me fix this, he said. Please, for us, don't. I held up my hand. There is no us anymore. There's just me trying to recover my money and you trying to save yourself. That's not fair. Neither was watching your father die while Bethany emptied his accounts. I stood up. You had choices, Mark. Every step of the way, you chose her. What do you want from me? His voice cracked. I'll sign whatever you want. Transfer the brewery shares back. Just tell me how to make this right. Another call from Bethany. This time, I grabbed his phone before he could decline it. Hello, Bethany, I answered. Perfect timing. We were just discussing your buyers. Put Mark on, she snapped. No, I don't think I will. Instead, let's talk about Monday's deadline. I caught Mark's panicked look, still planning to ignore it. You're bluffing. You won't go to the FBI. It would destroy Mark too. Try me. I pulled out my own phone, showing Mark the email draft to the Financial Crimes Unit. His face went ash white. I've got nothing left to lose. Wait. Mark grabbed my wrist. Just wait, please. I yanked my arm away. You have until tomorrow morning. Either transfer back every penny you stole, from me, from your father, from the brewery, or I send this email. You crazy bitch, Bethany hissed. You'd really destroy your own husband. Ex-husband, I corrected. The divorce papers are already filed. Funny how fraud and theft can speed up the process. Mark's head snapped up. What? Check your email. I gathered my things. You've been served. Kiara, don't do this. Tomorrow morning, I cut him off. And Mark, choose carefully this time. Family loyalty won't look good in a prison jumpsuit. I left him there, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. Bethany's threats still echoing from the phone. Outside, Lucas was waiting in his car. How'd it go? About as expected. I buckled my seatbelt. He'll cave. He always does when Bethany pushes hard enough. And if he doesn't, my phone chimed with a new message from Helen. Please come to the house. There's something you need to know. Then we moved to Plan B. I showed Lucas the message. Want to bet she's finally ready to talk about those hospital transfers. Be careful, he warned. They're cornered animals now. Good. I typed a quick reply to Helen. That's exactly where I want them. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Mark through the cafe window, still staring at the divorce papers. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it needs to burn hot enough to cauterize the wounds it leaves behind. Tomorrow morning couldn't come soon enough. Helen's house felt smaller now, its shadows longer. The family photos lining the hallway watched me like judges as I followed her into the study. Bethany was already there, perched on the leather sofa like a queen on her throne. No Mark in sight. I'm glad you came, Helen said, closing the door behind us. We need to talk about your accusations. They're not accusations when I have proof. I remained standing, keeping both of them in view. Where's Mark? He won't be joining us. Bethany's smile was razor sharp. But we have something you might want to see. She slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Me and Lucas, at the hotel bar, outside his apartment, in his car. What's this supposed to be? Insurance. Helen's voice was soft, disappointed. Against your rash decisions. You're having me followed. We're protecting our family. Bethany leaned forward. How do you think it'll look to the FBI when they learn you've been conspiring with a rival investor, one who stands to gain from the brewery's collapse? The air left my lungs. Lucas has nothing to do with this. No? Helen picked up one of the photos. His firm's been trying to acquire the brewery for years. And now, suddenly, you're staying at his place, sharing confidential documents. That's not. We spoke to your lawyer this morning, Bethany cut in. Apparently, he's very concerned about your mental state, the stress of the divorce, your obsession with these conspiracy theories about the family. My hands started shaking. You can't possibly think anyone will believe. They'll believe whatever we tell them. Helen's eyes were wet with tears that might even have been genuine. We're trying to help you, dear. Before you destroy yourself. By threatening me. By offering you a way out. Bethany produced another document. Sign over your shares in the brewery. Drop these ridiculous allegations, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. And if I don't, then we'll have no choice but to report your industrial espionage to the authorities. She shrugged. I'm sure Lucas will understand. Prison sentences for corporate fraud are quite reasonable these days. The room spun slightly. You'd frame him to protect yourself? We'd do whatever necessary to protect this family. Helen touched my arm. Please, Kiara, don't force our hand. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Where are you? Something's wrong. Mark just showed up at my office. Tick-tock, Bethany sang. What's it going to be? I looked at the photos again, at the careful documentation of every meeting, every conversation. They'd planned this from the start, turning my own investigation against me. I'll need time to think. You have an hour. Bethany stood, smoothing her designer dress. Oh, and don't bother warning Lucas. My lawyer's already meeting with him now. Helen pressed the contract into my hands. We really did love you like a daughter. Remember that. I walked out into the fading daylight, the papers heavy in my bag. My phone kept buzzing. Lucas trying to reach me. Mark's messages piling up. My lawyer's warnings about concerning developments. In the car, I finally let myself break. One sob escaped, then another, until I could barely breathe. They'd taken everything. My marriage, my money, my reputation. And now they were going to take the one person who'd stood by me through it all. My phone lit up with a final message from Lucas. They're saying you used me to steal company secrets. What's going on? I started the car, hands steady now despite everything. Helen was right about one thing. They were family. And family knew all your weaknesses, all your pressure points, all the ways to make you bleed. But they'd forgotten something crucial. They'd taught me how to play this game, and I'd learned from the best. I pulled away from Helen's house, leaving the contract unsigned in her mailbox. Sometimes, when you're backed into a corner, the only way out is through. And I was done playing defense. Time to show them what real betrayal looked like. The brewery's annual shareholders meeting wasn't meant to be a battleground, but I'd learned that battlegrounds rarely announce themselves in advance. I sat in the back, watching Bethany command the room with practiced charm, Mark hovering at her side like a nervous shadow. And despite recent challenges, she was saying, our acquisition deal will ensure the brewery's legacy continues under proper management. My laptop connected to the projector with a soft beep. Right on schedule. Before we vote on the sale, I stood up. There are some documents the shareholders should review. Bethany's smile flickered. We've already distributed all relevant materials. Not these. I clicked the first slide. Bank statements filled the screen. Transactions highlighted in angry red. These show where the money really went during Robert Thompson's final months. The room erupted in whispers. Mark stepped forward, but Helen grabbed his arm. This is hardly the time. Bethany started. It's exactly the time. I advanced to the next slide. While Robert Thompson lay dying, over $2 million was siphoned through shell companies, companies registered to Bethany Thompson. These documents are clearly fabricated, Helen called out, but her voice shook. They're verified by 3 independent auditors. I met Bethany's gaze. And by your former assistant, the one you fired last month. She kept copies of everything. Bethany's composure cracked. Mark, do something. But Mark was staring at the screen, at his father's forged signature, dated 3 days after the coma began. Did you know? He asked quietly. When Dad was in the hospital, did you already have this planned? I did what I had to do. Bethany's voice turned hard. The brewery was failing. You were too weak to save it, so you killed him. The words exploded from Mark. The stress of those unauthorized loans, the constant pressure about changing his will. You knew his heart couldn't take it. The shareholders were on their feet now, phones recording everything. Helen had sunk into her chair, face ashen. You don't understand, Bethany snarled. None of you do. I built this deal. I found the buyers. Everything I did was to protect us. To protect yourself, I corrected, clicking to the final slide. But you made one mistake. You got sloppy with the paperwork. The screen showed a single email, dated the day before Robert Thompson's death. From Bethany to her lawyer. Make sure the DNR order is in place before we move the money. We can't risk him waking up. The room went silent. Mark stumbled back like he'd been hit. A DNR? Dad never wanted. I can explain. Bethany reached for him, but he recoiled. Don't touch me. He turned to the shareholders. As acting CEO, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove Bethany Thompson from all positions within the company, pending criminal investigation. You can't. Bethany spun toward Helen. Mother, tell them I did this for us. But Helen was already walking out, her shoulders bowed with the weight of too many willful blindnesses. The police are waiting outside, I said quietly, along with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Your choice, how this ends. Bethany's laugh was brittle. You really think you've won? That destroying this family makes you better than me? No. I packed up my laptop. It just makes me different. I learned that from you. The doors burst open as federal agents entered. I didn't stay to watch them lead Bethany away, or to see Mark's attempt at an apology. Some victories feel too much like funerals to celebrate. Outside, Lucas was waiting by his car. You okay? He asked. No. I watched through the window as Bethany was handcuffed, still screaming about family loyalty. But I will be. What now? I handed him a folder. My resignation from the brewery's board, effective immediately. Now we rebuild, just not here. As we drove away, my phone lit up with Mark's call. I declined it, watching the brewery shrink in the rearview mirror. Some debts can never be repaid, and some bridges need to burn, so you can't be tempted to cross back over them. It was time to find new ground to stand on. The last box from my office at the brewery sat unopened on my new apartment's kitchen counter. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds, so different from the suburban view I'd shared with Mark. My phone buzzed, Helen's name on the screen. The sentencing is tomorrow, she said when I answered. No hello, no pleasantries. Bethany asked for you. I'm not going. She wants to apologize. I traced the edge of the cardboard box, feeling the sharp corner under my finger. Does she want to apologize, or does she want to explain? Helen's silence was answer enough. How's Mark handling it? He's a heavy pause. The brewery's doing better. New management team. He talks about you sometimes. Don't. I opened the box finally, finding my old family photos nested between financial reports. We both know why it ended. People can change, Kiara. He has changed. Maybe, but I'm not interested in verification. I pulled out a frame, my first day at the brewery, Mark's arm around my waist, both of us smiling. Goodbye, Helen. I set the photo face down as Lucas knocked on my door, right on time with dinner. Thai food and final paperwork, he announced, setting the bags down. The investment group loved your proposal. They should. I learned from the best about how money really moves. I signed the documents without reading them again. I'd done enough due diligence to last a lifetime. You know, Lucas hesitated. The offer to join my firm still stands. After everything you uncovered, I need to build something of my own. I handed back the signed papers. Something clean. My phone lit up again. Mark this time. You should take it, Lucas said softly. Closure matters, I answered. Hello, Mark. I sold the house, he said. Thought you should know. The house we'd picked together, argued over, made our own. Okay. I found your old investment notebook in the study. The one with all your ideas for the brewery's expansion. His voice cracked slightly. You were right, about everything. Not everything. I looked at the unopened bottle of craft beer he'd given me on our first date, still sitting on my counter. I thought love was enough. Kiara, don't say you're sorry again. I picked up the bottle, feeling its weight. Just do better with whatever comes next. After we hung up, Lucas raised an eyebrow. You okay? Getting there. I handed him the beer bottle. Here, a relic from another life. You sure? Some things you keep, others you let go. My laptop chimed with a new email. Another investor interested in my startup. And some things you build from scratch. Lucas left after dinner, taking the signed papers and the old beer with him. I stood at my window, watching the city pulse with possibility. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mark, Found this in the study. Thought you might want it back. The attached photo showed my old business card, the one from my first day at the brewery. I'd written on the back, "Dreams don't work unless you do." I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some memories you keep, not as anchors to the past, but as markers of how far you've come. The city lights blurred slightly as I turned away from the window. On my counter, that last box from the brewery waited to be unpacked or discarded. Tomorrow, I'd decide which. Tonight, I had a new business plan to write, a new future to map out. My laptop screen glowed with opportunity. Startup seeks angel investors for ethical finance platform. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something better from the ashes. I began to type, letting the past settle behind me like a closed book, while ahead, blank pages waited to be filled. The city hummed with promise, and this time I was writing my own story.
Oops, was that your Harvard acceptance letter? Madison smirked, dropping the shredded pieces of paper at my feet. Dad's money is for his real kids, not some charity case he inherited. Her brother Tyler leaned against the doorframe, both of them blocking my escape from what used to be my study room. My name is Olivia Bennett, and at 18, I was watching my stepfather's precious twins destroy my future, one acceptance letter at a time. The worst part? They didn't even try to hide it. Why would they? Their father, Richard, had made it clear from day one that his perfect twins could do no wrong. I stared at the confetti of my dreams scattered across the floor. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all gone. 3 years of perfect grades, countless sleepless nights, and more extracurricular activities than I could count, destroyed in minutes by two entitled 17-year-olds who couldn't stand the idea of their father's money going to someone else's education. You know, Tyler added, casually ripping open another envelope, Dad always said Mom's charity case would end up disappointing him. Guess he was right. He paused, pretending to read the letter before tearing it to pieces. Oh look, Columbia. Way too expensive for someone like you. I remained silent, which only seemed to irritate them more. Madison stepped closer, her designer shoes crunching the papers beneath her feet. Nothing to say. No tears. Come on, Oliver, where's the drama? You're usually so good at playing the perfect student. The thing is, they didn't know my mother. They didn't know Emily Bennett, the woman who worked 3 jobs to put me through private school before she met their father. The woman who spent every spare moment teaching me the value of education and independence. The woman who, even after marrying Richard, kept her own bank account and continued working, despite his insistence that she didn't need to. You done? I asked calmly, bending down to gather the pieces of my letters. My composure seemed to throw them off balance. They were used to their victims crying, pleading, or running to their father. I did none of those things. What's wrong with you? Madison demanded, her perfectly manicured hands on her hips. Don't you get it? You're not going to college. Dad's not paying for you. You're nothing but a burden he took on when you married your pathetic mother. I thought about my mom then, about how she'd smiled mysteriously when I worried about college costs. Everything's taken care of, sweetheart, she'd said, just 2 months before the cancer took her. Just focus on getting those acceptance letters. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of living with Richard and his twins, watching them systematically try to erase every trace of my mother from the house. 6 months of Richard's subtle hints about community college being a more appropriate choice for someone in my situation. Actually, I said, standing up with the torn pieces in my hands, I think you're the ones who don't get it. Before either of them could respond, my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Harrison and Associates, my mother's lawyers. The same lawyers Richard had been trying to contact since Mom's death, claiming he needed to sort out some paperwork. Excuse me, I said, stepping between them. I need to take this call. Whatever, Madison scoffed. Probably the financial aid office calling to reject you. Come on, Tyler, we're done here. I waited until they left, their laughter echoing down the hallway before answering the call. Hello? Miss Bennett? This is James Harrison. I apologize for the delay, but as per your mother's instructions, we were to wait until you received all your college acceptance letters before contacting you. I looked down at the shredded papers in my hand. I received them. Excellent. Your mother left specific instructions about your education fund. Would you be able to come to our office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? There are some documents you need to sign now that you're 18. Education fund. I felt a smile tugging at my lips as pieces started falling into place. Of course, Mr. Harrison. Should I bring my stepfather? There was a pause on the other end. That won't be necessary. Your mother was very clear about keeping this matter between you and the firm. She mentioned something about preventing external interference with your choices. Even after death, my mother was protecting me. I thought about all those extra hours she worked, even after marrying Richard. The mysterious appointments she kept. The quiet smile when Richard talked about his plans for the twins' education. Miss Bennett, Mr. Harrison's voice brought me back to the present. One more thing, your mother left a letter for you. She asked us to give it to you along with the fund documentation. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'll see you tomorrow. Mr. Harrison smiled. Emily was quite savvy with investments. She also had a substantial life insurance policy that she kept separate from her marriage to Richard. She was adamant about maintaining financial independence. He pulled out an envelope cream-colored with my name written in my mother's elegant handwriting. She asked me to give you this once everything was in place. I opened the letter carefully, my heart racing as I began to read. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then you've received your college acceptance letters, and I'm no longer there to celebrate with you. I'm sorry for that, sweetheart, but I'm not sorry for preparing you for this moment. I knew when I married Richard that his children would never accept you. I saw how they treated others, how they viewed money as their birthright rather than a privilege. Richard indulged them too much, and I worried about how that would affect your future. That's why I never stopped working, never fully combined our finances. Richard called it stubborn pride, but it was actually maternal instinct. I needed to ensure that your dreams wouldn't be at the mercy of others' generosity or lack thereof. This fund is yours, completely separate from Richard and the twins. Use it wisely, but don't let anyone make you feel guilty for having it. You've earned this through your hard work and dedication. Remember what I always told you. Education is the one thing nobody can take away from you. All my love, Mom. I wiped away tears as Mr. Harrison discreetly pushed a box of tissues toward me. There's more, he said gently. Your mother left specific instructions about handling any interference with your college applications. He pulled out another document. She suspected someone might try to sabotage your opportunities. That's why she had me maintain direct contact with each university you applied to. We have copies of all your acceptance letters, safely stored here. I thought about Madison and Tyler, so smug as they shredded my letters, thinking they were destroying my only copies. Mom had outmaneuvered them before they even knew there was a game to play. Additionally, Mr. Harrison continued, the trust is structured so that neither Richard nor his children can contest it. Your mother made sure of that. Just then, my phone started buzzing with texts from Madison. Where are you? Dad's looking for you. He wants to talk about realistic college options, lol. Better hurry home before you lose your room too. I showed the messages to Mr. Harrison, along with the photos I'd taken of the shredded acceptance letters. He frowned. This is exactly what your mother wanted to protect you from. Would you like me to handle the situation? I thought about it for a moment. Not yet. I think Mom would want me to handle this my way. He nodded approvingly. Just like Emily, she never rushed into confrontation either. Always waited for the right moment. As I left the office, I felt lighter somehow. The weight of uncertainty that had been crushing me since Mom's death was gone, replaced by a sense of quiet confidence. When I arrived home, Richard and the twins were waiting in the living room, their expressions a mixture of smugness and false concern. Olivia, Richard began, using his reasonable parent voice. Madison and Tyler told me about what happened with your college letters. While I don't condone their methods, perhaps this is an opportunity to discuss more suitable options for your future. I sat down calmly, noting how the twins shifted uncomfortably at my lack of distress. What's wrong with her? Tyler whispered to Madison. She should be crying or something. Actually, I said, my voice steady. I already have my college plans sorted out. Mom made sure of that. Richard's patronizing smile faltered slightly. Now, Olivia, I know Emily had ambitious dreams for you, but we need to be realistic about financial limitations. I thought about the trust fund documents in my bag, about Mom's letter, about all the times she'd worked late while Richard took the twins on shopping sprees. You're right, I said, watching their faces light up with premature victory. We should be realistic about finances. That's exactly what Mom was, realistic. But I think we should save that discussion for tomorrow. Mr. Harrison would explain it better than I could. The color drained from Richard's face. Harrison, Emily's lawyer? What does he have to do with this? I stood up, enjoying their confused expressions. Everything. He has to do with everything. But don't worry, you'll all find out soon enough. As I walked upstairs, I heard Madison's shrill voice. Dad, what's going on? Why does she look so happy? I closed my bedroom door, silencing their worried conversations. Pulling out Mom's letter again, I read it one more time, imagining her voice, her quiet strength. Tomorrow would bring chaos, I was sure. Richard would bluster about family loyalty, the twins would throw tantrums about fairness, but none of that mattered anymore. Mom had given me more than just financial security. She'd given me the power to choose my own path. I opened my laptop and began composing emails to Harvard, Yale, and Columbia, accepting their offers and requesting fresh copies of my acceptance letters. Let Madison and Tyler keep the shredded ones as souvenirs. I had bigger things to focus on. My phone buzzed again. More demanding texts from the twins, but I ignored them. Mom always said that true power lies in knowing when to act and when to stay quiet. Right now, silence was my greatest weapon. Tomorrow would be soon enough for revelations. Tonight was for making plans that would make my mother proud. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was electric with tension. I came downstairs to find Richard pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, attempting to reach Mr. Harrison's office. Madison and Tyler huddled over their phones, frantically Googling information about trust funds and inheritance laws. This is ridiculous, Richard snapped, slamming his phone down. I'm your legal guardian. I have a right to know about any financial arrangements involving my stepdaughter. I poured myself a cup of coffee, savoring the moment. Actually, you don't. Mom made sure of that. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Mr. Harrison stood there, impeccable in his charcoal suit, holding a briefcase. Behind him was a woman I recognized from photos. My mother's older sister, Aunt Sophie, whom Richard had conveniently forgotten to invite to family events since Mom's passing. Perfect timing, I said, letting them in. We were just discussing Mom's arrangements. The twins scrambled to look presentable while Richard straightened his posture, switching to his business persona. Mr. Harrison, this really isn't necessary. Family matters should be handled within the family. That's exactly why I'm here, Aunt Sophie interjected, her voice carrying the same quiet strength my mother's had. Because family matters. Mr. Harrison set his briefcase on the dining room table. Miss Bennett has asked me to explain the details of her mother's educational trust fund, as well as address some concerning behavior regarding her college acceptance letters. He pulled out the photos I'd taken of the shredded letters. Madison's designer shoe prints were clearly visible on the fragments. The twins shifted uncomfortably. That's just silly teenage drama. Richard attempted to dismiss it. Nothing worth involving lawyers over. On the contrary, Mr. Harrison continued, attempting to interfere with someone's educational opportunities is a serious matter, especially when the person in question has been accepted to several prestigious institutions. He produced copies of my acceptance letters, pristine, official, and very much valid. The twins' faces paled. Now, regarding the trust fund, Mr. Harrison opened another folder. Emily Bennett established this fund 5 years ago, using her inheritance, personal savings, and investment returns. The total amount, as of today, is sufficient to cover Miss Bennett's undergraduate and graduate education at any institution of her choice, with considerable funds remaining for living expenses. Richard's jaw tightened. Emily never mentioned any of this. She didn't need to, Aunt Sophie spoke up. My sister was smart enough to know that some people might try to interfere with Olivia's future. She protected her daughter the best way she knew how, by being prepared. Madison stood up suddenly. This isn't fair. Dad, you can't let her have all that money. What about our college funds? Your college funds, Mr. Harrison noted dryly, remain exactly as your father arranged them. This money has nothing to do with your father or his assets. It comes solely from Emily's personal resources. Tyler, always quicker to understand financial matters than his sister, slumped in his chair. We can't touch it, can we? Any of it? No, I said simply. You can't. Richard made one last attempt to assert control. Olivia, be reasonable. We're your family now. We should discuss this together, make decisions as a unit. Family? Aunt Sophie's laugh was bitter. Is that what you call people who destroy college acceptance letters, who try to crush a young woman's dreams out of spite? I raised my hand, silencing the brewing argument. I've already made my decisions. I'm going to Harvard in the fall. The trust fund will cover everything I need. And I added, looking directly at Richard, I'm moving in with Aunt Sophie until then. You can't just leave, Madison protested. Dad, tell her she can't leave. But Richard's power was crumbling before our eyes. The man who'd spent years subtly undermining my achievements, who'd allowed his children to bully me while preaching about family unity, finally realized he had no control over this situation. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison said, pulling out a final document. Emily left instructions about the house. Richard's head snapped up. The house is in my name. The house, Mr. Harrison corrected, was purchased jointly, with Emily contributing 60% of the down payment. Her will specifies that her share passes to Olivia upon her 18th birthday. The silence that followed was deafening. So I said, standing up, you all have two choices. Either we can arrange a buyout of my share of the house, or we can put it on the market and split the proceeds according to the ownership percentages. Madison burst into tears, while Tyler stared at the table, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. Richard looked like he aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I'll start packing my things, I announced. Aunt Sophie, could you help me? As we climbed the stairs, I heard Madison's shrill voice. Dad, do something. But there was nothing he could do. My mother, brilliant and foresighted as always, had made sure of that. In my room, Aunt Sophie helped me pack while sharing stories about Mom, stories of her strength, her determination, her quiet ways of fighting battles nobody knew were happening. Your mother, she said, carefully wrapping Mom's photo frame, always said that the best revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about making sure they can't hurt you. By evening, my things were packed and loaded into Aunt Sophie's car. The twins had retreated to their rooms, their world of privilege and entitlement shaken to its core. Richard stood in the doorway, watching as I prepared to leave. You know, I said, turning to him one last time, Mom never wanted this kind of division. She just wanted me to have a fair chance at my dreams. He nodded slowly, perhaps finally understanding the woman he married and lost. Emily was. She was always smarter than I gave her credit for. Yes, I agreed, she was. As we drove away, Aunt Sophie glanced at me. You handled that very gracefully. Emily would be proud. I touched the locket containing Mom's picture. She taught me well. Sometimes the biggest victories come from simply being prepared. 2 months later, I stood in my dorm room at Harvard, unpacking my things. Madison and Tyler had started at the State University. Their father's financial troubles after the house buyout had affected their college choices considerably. On my desk, I placed the framed photo of Mom and me from my high school graduation. Next to it, I set a small box containing the shredded acceptance letters, a reminder that sometimes the best response to cruelty is simply to succeed. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Sophie. First day of classes tomorrow. Emily would be so proud of you, honey. Show them what a prepared woman can do. I smiled, looking around at my new beginning. Mom had given me more than just financial security. She taught me the power of quiet strength, of planning ahead, and of never letting anyone else define my worth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead, on your own terms. Mom, is it true you had another family before us? Emma's voice trembled as she stood in my doorway, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. My heart stopped. At 15, my daughter had never looked at me with such uncertainty, such distrust. I'm Catherine Mitchell, 42, and that moment marked the beginning of my family's unraveling. I should have known Amanda, my sister-in-law, would eventually find a way to destroy the careful peace I'd built over the last 17 years. Who told you that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Emma's eyes darted to her phone, then back to me. Aunt Amanda showed me pictures. She said you abandoned your first husband and kids, that you just disappeared one day. Her voice cracked. She said it's in your nature to leave when things get hard. The room felt suddenly airless. Amanda had finally done it. Found the perfect weapon to hurt me where it would cause the most damage, my relationship with my daughter. Emma, sweetheart, that's not. I started, but she cut me off. Don't lie to me. She thrust her phone forward, showing me what looked like old photographs. Aunt Amanda has proof. She showed me everything. I recognized those photos. They weren't what Amanda claimed they were. But how could I explain the complex truth to a teenager who'd already decided I was guilty? How could I defend myself against a carefully crafted narrative designed to destroy me? I need time to process this, Emma whispered, backing away. I'm staying at Aunt Amanda's tonight. She said I could. Of course she did. Amanda had been laying this trap for years, slowly positioning herself as Emma's confidant, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I watched helplessly as my daughter grabbed her pre-packed overnight bag. Amanda had planned this well and headed for the door. Emma, please. I called after her. Dad already said it's okay, she shot back, not even turning around. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through our suddenly empty house. I sank onto my bed, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone to call my husband David. He answered on the first ring. Kathy, I can explain. You knew about this? My voice was barely a whisper. You gave Amanda permission to take our daughter. She showed me the photos too, David said, his voice uncertain. Kathy, why did you ever tell me about your past? About your first family? I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. Because there is no first family, David. Those photos aren't what Amanda claims they are. She's twisting everything like she always has. Then explain it to me, he demanded. Because right now, the evidence. Evidence? I laughed bitterly. You mean carefully selected photos without context? Stories Amanda's crafted to fit her narrative? You've known me for 20 years, David. Known me, loved me, built a life with me. How can you suddenly believe I'm capable of abandoning children? The silence on his end was deafening. I need to go, I said finally. I need to figure out how to fix this before Amanda does any more damage. I hung up before he could respond, my mind already racing through possibilities. Amanda had been waiting years for this moment, collecting pieces of my past like ammunition, twisting them to serve her purpose. She'd never forgiven me for marrying her brother, for stealing him away as she saw it. In her mind, I'd broken up their perfect sibling relationship. But those photos, I knew exactly where they'd come from. My grandmother's old albums, the ones that had disappeared during her move to the nursing home 3 years ago. I'd always suspected Amanda had taken them, but I couldn't prove it. Now I knew why. I drove to my grandmother's nursing home that evening, hoping against hope that she was having one of her clear days. At 92, Gran's memory came and went, but when it came to the past, especially the painful parts, she remained remarkably lucid. Catherine, she smiled as I entered her room. You look troubled, dear. I sat beside her bed, taking her fragile hand in mine. Gran, do you remember your old photo albums? The ones that went missing during your move? Her eyes sharpened. Amanda took them. Said she was keeping them safe, but I never trusted that girl. Too much like her mother, always twisting things to suit her stories. The photos from 1997. I said carefully. The ones with the children. Ah, Gran's grip tightened on my hand. So she's finally done it. Used those against you, has she? Those poor foster children you helped with during your college volunteer work. I always wondered if Amanda would try to use them somehow. Tears filled my eyes. She told Emma they were my abandoned children, that I had a whole other family I left behind. Gran's face darkened with anger. That spiteful girl. She knows very well those children were part of the foster care program you volunteered with. 3 months you spent at summer, helping those kids adjust to their new homes. It was one of the reasons I was so proud of you. Why I knew you'd make a wonderful mother someday. Emma won't believe me, I whispered. Amanda's had years to poison her mind to build up this story. And now David's doubting me too. Then perhaps, Gran said, reaching for her bedside drawer with shaking hands, it's time I gave you this. She pulled out an old leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age. I've been saving it, waiting for the right moment. Amanda doesn't know about this one. It was hidden in my special box. It's my diary from that summer. Every entry about your volunteer work, about those children, about the wonderful thing you were doing. And more importantly, she paused, her eyes glinting, it contains the truth about Amanda's own past. about what she did to her own family when David chose you over her manipulations. I took the diary with trembling hands, understanding dawning. Gran, are you saying? She nodded slowly. Read it carefully, dear. Sometimes the best defense against lies is the simple, unvarnished truth. Amanda's been spinning stories for so long, she's forgotten that some of us remember what really happened. As I left the nursing home that evening, diary clutched to my chest, I felt a glimmer of hope. Amanda had spent years building her web of lies, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. The truth has a way of surviving, hidden in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Now I just had to figure out how to use it to save my relationship with my daughter before Amanda's poison spread any deeper. The diary sat open on my kitchen table, its pages revealing truths I'd almost forgotten. I'd spent the entire night reading, each entry bringing back memories both beautiful and painful. But it was the entries from September 1999 that made my hands shake, the real story of why Amanda hated me so much. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. Don't try to contact me. I need space to process everything. Followed immediately by one from Amanda. She's safe with me. Unlike some people, I don't abandon family. The irony of that message made me want to scream. I flipped to the relevant diary entry, reading Gran's neat handwriting again. September 15, 1999. Amanda's actions today have torn this family apart. After David announced his engagement to Catherine, Amanda emptied their joint business account, $50,000 that David had saved for their family store's expansion. She left nothing but a note saying you chose her over family. David is devastated. Their parents are in shock. Yet somehow, she's convinced everyone it's Catherine's fault, claiming the money was rightfully hers. I remembered that day clearly. David and I had just announced our engagement, and Amanda had seemed surprisingly supportive. We didn't know then that she'd already set her plan in motion, systematically withdrawing money from the business account she shared with David, preparing to punish him for choosing me. The store, their parents' legacy, had nearly gone bankrupt. David had worked extra jobs for 2 years to save it, while Amanda started her new life in Colorado, playing the victim and sending poisonous letters home about how I'd stolen her brother. A knock at my door startled me from my memories. It was David, looking exhausted. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice rough. "Emma's messages are getting more upset. She's saying she wants to live with Amanda permanently." I let him in, leading him to the kitchen where Gran's diary lay open. "Before we talk about Emma, there's something you need to see." He sat down heavily, picking up the diary. "What is this?" "Your grandmother's diary. The one she kept during everything that happened. Read the September entries." I watched his face as he read, saw the old pain resurface as he remembered the betrayal he tried so hard to forget. "I'd almost convinced myself I was remembering it wrong," he said finally. "Amanda's told her version so many times." "That's what she does," I said quietly. "She twists the truth until even we doubt our own memories, and now she's doing it to Emma." David continued reading, his face growing darker with each page. "There's more here, about Amanda's first marriage. I didn't even know she was married before Greg." I nodded. "Keep reading." The entry he'd reached was from 2001, 2 years after Amanda had left with the money. Gran had kept tabs on her through family connections. Amanda's husband Thomas filed for divorce today. He discovered she'd been lying about her past, claiming her brother had stolen her inheritance and forced her out of the family business. She'd used this story to convince Thomas to invest his savings in her new venture. When he learned the truth, she disappeared with his money too, just like with David. David looked up, his face pale. "She did the same thing to her first husband. Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because she convinced everyone it was all lies spread by her jealous ex, just like she convinced them I was the reason she took your money. And now she's using those foster children photos to create another lie, making Emma believe I abandoned a family." David ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident. "But why now? Why target Emma after all these years?" I pulled out my laptop, opening my email. "Because of this. 2 months ago, your parents updated their will. They're leaving the family store to Emma when she turns 25. Amanda found out last week." Understanding dawned on David's face. "She's turning Emma against you, so she can influence her," I finished. "She's playing a loving aunt, the only one telling Emma the truth about her mother. And when Emma inherits the store, Amanda will have another chance to get what she thinks she deserves, David said bitterly. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Emma. Aunt Amanda showed me more proof. Pictures of you with your other daughter. How could you never tell me I had a sister? I showed David the message. The foster girl from the summer program. Her name was Lucy. She was 6 years old and had just lost her mother. I spent 3 months helping her adjust to her new foster family. Amanda's turned it into another weapon. David stood up abruptly. We need to get Emma away from her. Now that we know what she's doing. No, I said firmly. If we try to force Emma home, it'll only prove Amanda's lies about me being controlling. We need to be smarter than that. I picked up Gran's diary again, turning to the final pages. Gran wrote something else here, something about Amanda's pattern. She doesn't just tell lies, she creates elaborate stories using pieces of truth, photos without context, real documents twisted to fit her narrative. But she always makes one mistake. What's that? She gets overconfident. She pushes too far, adds too many details until her lies collapse under their own weight. I smiled grimly. And according to Emma's last few messages, Amanda's been adding a lot of details to my supposed abandoned family story. I opened my laptop again, pulling up old records from my college volunteer program. It's time to let Amanda hang herself with her own lies. But first, we need to talk to someone else. Who? Lucy Peterson. That little girl in the photos. She's 28 now, working as a social worker in Seattle. I found her on LinkedIn last night, and guess what? She remembers everything about that summer, including all the photos Amanda's been using to manipulate Emma. David sat back down, hope flickering in his eyes. What's your plan? First, we document everything. Every lie Amanda's told, every twisted story, every manipulated photo. Then we wait. Wait for what? I showed him Amanda's latest social media post, a long detailed story about how she was supporting her niece through the traumatic discovery of her mother's past, complete with carefully edited photos and vague references to my other family. We wait for her to make it all public, to commit fully to her lies, because once she does, I held up Gran's diary, we can show everyone, especially Emma, exactly how history is repeating itself. David reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. I should have seen it sooner. Should have remembered what she's capable of. We all wanted to believe she changed, I said softly, but now she's targeted our daughter, and that's something I won't forgive. As if on cue, another social media notification popped up. Amanda announcing a special family dinner for tomorrow night, where she promised all truths will be revealed. I smiled grimly. Perfect, she's setting the stage for her own undoing. Little did Amanda know she wasn't the only one with old records and revealing documents. Sometimes, the best way to fight a carefully constructed lie is with simple, unvarnished truth, and I had 17 years worth of it ready to deploy. The family dinner at Amanda's house felt like walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. The table was set perfectly, photos strategically placed on the sideboard, images from my volunteer summer, arranged to look like a family timeline. Emma sat beside Amanda, barely meeting my eyes as David and I entered. But Amanda hadn't noticed the small recorder in my pocket or the fact that Lucy Peterson was waiting at a nearby hotel, ready with notarized statements and original photographs from that summer. Most importantly, she hadn't noticed Gran's diary in my purse. Welcome, Amanda smiled, all warmth and concern. I thought it was time we all talked openly about everything. Emma deserves to know her full family history. I took my seat, noting how she positioned everyone. Emma far from me, closest to her. David's parents sat looking uncomfortable, clearly unsure about this whole situation. They'd arrived early at my request, armed with the truth about their daughter's past actions. Yes, I agreed calmly. Let's talk about family history. Amanda's smile faltered slightly at my tone, but recovered quickly. Emma, sweetie, why don't you show everyone those photos we found? Emma pulled out a stack of pictures, her hands trembling slightly. These are Mom with her other daughter, and her first husband. I waited as the photos were passed around. Pictures of me with Lucy, with other foster children, with the program coordinators. Amanda had carefully removed anything identifying them as part of a volunteer program. Actually, I said quietly, why don't we start with a different story? One from September 1999. Amanda's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. That's not relevant. It's very relevant, David's father interrupted, finally finding his voice. We should have told this story long ago. I opened Grand's diary, but before I could read, Amanda stood up abruptly. This is about Catherine's abandoned family, not ancient history. There is no abandoned family, I said firmly, pulling out my phone. Lucy, would you like to join us? The door opened and Lucy Peterson walked in, now a confident young woman but with the same bright eyes I remembered from that summer. Amanda's face went pale. Hi everyone, Lucy smiled. I'm Lucy Peterson, and 22 years ago, I was a 6-year-old foster child who had just lost her mother. Catherine was my summer program volunteer, helping me adjust to my new foster family. Emma's head jerked up, confusion crossing her face. But, Aunt Amanda said. Your Aunt Amanda lied, Lucy said gently. She took photos from a volunteer program and created a false narrative. I still have all the original documentation, including the program certificates and group photos with dates and titles. Amanda tried to interrupt, but David's mother spoke first. Just like you lied about why you took the money from the store, Amanda. Just like you lied to Thomas. Mom. Amanda's voice rose. You promised never to mention. I opened Grand's diary, finding the marked page. September 15, 1999. I read aloud. Amanda's actions today have torn this family apart. As I read Grand's account of Amanda's theft, her manipulation, her calculated destruction of her brother's business, Emma's face changed from confusion to shock to anger. You told me Mom was the one who ruined the family business, she whispered, turning to Amanda. You said she turned everyone against you. I was protecting you, Amanda insisted. You needed to know what she's capable of. What you're capable of, you mean? Lucy interjected, laying out official documents from the volunteer program. These are all the original photos, with dates and context. Catherine spent that summer helping children in crisis. She didn't abandon anyone. She helped us find stability. Emma's hands shook as she compared the original photos with Amanda's edited versions. You cropped out the program logo. You deleted the group photos. You lied to me. Emma, sweetheart, Amanda reached for her, but Emma jerked away. Don't touch me. You made me doubt my mom. You made me say horrible things to her. I wanted to go to my daughter, but I knew she needed to process this herself. Instead, I pulled out one final document, Amanda's recent bank statements obtained legally through David's parents. Would you like to tell everyone why you suddenly took such an interest in Emma's relationship with me? I asked quietly. Or should we discuss the timing of your lies in relation to the update of the family store's inheritance? The room went silent, Amanda's face contorted with rage. You had no right. We had every right, David's father cut in. The store is our legacy. We've watched you try to destroy it twice before. First with David's money, then with Thomas's. We won't let you manipulate Emma into giving you control when she inherits. Emma stood up, tears streaming down her face. You used me. You made me hate my mom because you wanted the store. Emma, no, I love you. Amanda started. Stop lying, Emma shouted. You've been lying to me for weeks. About Mom, about the photos, about everything. She ran to me then, falling into my arms like she used to when she was small. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I believed her. I held her close, feeling her tears soak into my shoulder. It's okay, baby. Her lies were very convincing. She's had lots of practice. Amanda made one last attempt. Everything I did was for this family. No, David said firmly, standing. Everything you did was for yourself. And now you've lost the last bit of trust anyone in this family had in you. We left Amanda sitting alone at her perfect dinner table, surrounded by her manipulated photos and exposed lies. Emma didn't look back as we walked out, her hand clutched tightly in mine. That night, as Emma, David, and I sat in our living room, beginning the process of healing, Emma asked to read Grand's diary. I want to understand everything, she said. No more secrets, no more lies. I handed her the diary, watching as she read the full history of her aunt's manipulations, her father's struggle to save the family business, and the truth about that volunteer summer that had been twisted into a weapon against us. You know what really shows the difference between you and Aunt Amanda? Emma said finally, looking up at me. These diary entries about the foster program. You never told anyone about helping those kids. You never used it to make yourself look good. You just did it because it was right. I hugged her close, grateful for my daughter's wisdom. Sometimes the truth doesn't need embellishment or manipulation. It just needs time to come to light. Later, I found a new text from Lucy. Thank you for that, Summer. You showed me what a real mother's love looks like. Emma is lucky to have you. I smiled, thinking how Amanda's attempt to destroy my relationship with my daughter had instead made it stronger, built on a foundation of truth rather than carefully constructed lies. Sometimes, the best revenge against manipulation isn't more manipulation. It's simply letting the truth speak for itself. They're not real grandchildren, Margaret. I wish you'd stop pretending. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the cheerful chaos of the family reunion like a knife. The backyard suddenly went quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy enough to touch. I stood there, fruit salad halfway to the picnic table, watching my children's faces fall as they processed their grandmother's words. My name is Margaret Chin, and at 35, I thought I finally found my place in the Sullivan family. My husband James and I had adopted our twins, Lily and Lucas, 5 years ago when they were just 3. They were our miracle, our answer to years of fertility struggles and heartbreak. But to Victoria Sullivan, they were a stain on her precious family tree. Mom, James started, but Victoria held up her hand, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the summer sun. I'm only saying what everyone's thinking, she continued, smoothing her expensive linen dress. The Sullivan family has a noble heritage. These children, while lovely, don't carry our blood. They don't even look like us. I set down the fruit salad, my hand surprisingly steady. Around us, cousins pretended to be absorbed in their phones. Aunts suddenly needed to check on dishes in the kitchen, and my father-in-law Robert became intensely interested in adjusting the umbrella over the picnic table. Grandma, Lucas said, his small voice wavering, we made you a card. He held out the handmade creation they'd spent hours on, covered in glitter and carefully drawn family portraits. Victoria barely glanced at it. That's nice, dear. Why don't you and your sister go play? She turned to James. Honestly, if you and Margaret had just tried harder for natural children. That's enough. My voice was quiet but firm. Years of taking Victoria's subtle jabs, her passive-aggressive comments about adoption, her exclusion of my children from family photos. It all crystallized into this moment. I reached for my bag, pulling out my laptop. Since you're so interested in our noble heritage, Victoria, I have something to show you. I've been working on a little project. Margaret, James whispered, touching my arm. He knew that tone in my voice. It was the same one I used when I discovered one of my students cheating in my history class. It's okay, honey, I said, opening my laptop. Your mother's right. Heritage is important. That's why I've spent the last 6 months researching the Sullivan family tree. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. We already know our history. The Sullivans came over on the Mayflower. Actually, I interrupted, turning the screen so everyone could see. That's not quite accurate. I found some fascinating documents in the county archives. The family began to gather around, curiosity overtaking their discomfort. I pulled up the scanned documents I'd discovered during my research. The first Sullivan in this area wasn't a Mayflower passenger. He was James O'Sullivan, who arrived in 1892. And here's something interesting. I clicked to the next image. He was adopted. Victoria's face went pale. That's impossible. The records are quite clear. James O'Sullivan was adopted by Michael and Mary Burke when he was 4 years old. They changed his name to Sullivan after the adoption. I smiled, clicking through more documents. And that's not all. Your grandmother, Eleanor Sullivan, she was adopted too. The backyard erupted in whispers. Victoria's sister Catherine leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Is that why we could never find Grand's birth certificate? Exactly, I said. She was adopted in 1925. I found the paperwork in the state archives. It seems adoption runs deep in the Sullivan family tree. Victoria sank into a nearby chair, her perfect posture crumbling. You're making this up. I can assure you I'm not. As a history teacher, I know the importance of thorough research. Would you like to see Eleanor's adoption records? Or perhaps the letters I found from your great-grandmother describing how blessed she felt to adopt James O'Sullivan? Lily and Lucas had crept closer, their eyes wide as they absorbed this information. James stood behind me, his hand warm on my shoulder. But our heritage, Victoria stammered. Is beautiful, I finished for her. It's a heritage of love, of choosing family, of making room in your heart for children who need a home. Just like James O'Sullivan's parents did. Just like Eleanor's parents did. Just like James and I did with Lily and Lucas. The twins beamed, standing a little taller. Around us, family members were pulling out phones, taking pictures of the documents, discussing their own memories of Eleanor and the stories they'd heard growing up. Mom, James said softly, did you know about any of this? Victoria shook her head, still staring at the laptop screen. Your father never, we always just assumed. You know what they say about assumptions, I said, closing my laptop. They make you miss the truth about your own family. Now, who wants fruit salad? As I moved to pick up the bowl, Catherine grabbed my arm. Wait, Margaret. Tell us more. What else did you find? For the next hour, I shared the story of the Sullivan family, the real story. How James O'Sullivan had been orphaned in the Irish potato famine. How the Burkes had taken him in. How their love had given him a future. How Eleanor's adoption had saved her from a life in an overcrowded orphanage. How she'd grown up to become a champion for children's causes. Victoria sat silently through it all, the carefully constructed narrative of her family's noble bloodline crumbling with each revelation. Finally, as I finished showing the last document, Lucas approached her cautiously. Grandma, he said, still holding his card, does this mean you were wrong about us not being real family? The backyard went quiet again, all eyes on Victoria. She looked at the card, then at Lucas's hopeful face, then at the laptop with its undeniable evidence of her family's adoptive heritage. She began, then stopped, looking lost for perhaps the first time in her perfectly controlled life. The card is beautiful, I said, giving Lucas a gentle push toward her. Why don't you show Grandma what you drew? Lucas hesitated, then held out the card again. This time, Victoria took it, opening it with trembling hands. Inside, Lily and Lucas had drawn the entire family, including Victoria in a bright purple dress, her favorite color, though she'd never admit it, standing in front of what they labeled the best family ever. We gave you a crown, Lily said, pointing, because you're the queen of the family. Victoria touched the glittery crown they'd drawn on her head, and I saw something crack in her carefully maintained facade. A tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a trail through her perfect makeup. The story wasn't over. One afternoon couldn't erase years of prejudice and hurt. But as I watched Victoria pull both twins into a tentative hug, I knew something had shifted. Sometimes the truth, especially about family, has a way of breaking down the walls we build around our hearts. Margaret, Catherine called from the picnic table, you have to tell us more. When did you start this research? How did you find all this? I smiled, joining the family at the table. Well, it all started when I was teaching my students about genealogy. The weeks following the family reunion brought changes I never expected. Victoria, who had previously limited her interaction with our family to formal holiday visits and the occasional reluctant dinner, started calling regularly. At first, it was just short conversations, ostensibly about the family history I'd uncovered. I found some old photographs in the attic, she said during one call. There's one of Eleanor, my grandmother. She's standing with her adoptive parents. I never knew, I always thought. I could hear the struggle in her voice, decades of pride warring with newfound truth. Would you like to come over and look at them together? I offered. The twins would love to help organize them. There was a pause, then a soft, yes, I think I'd like that. That Saturday, Victoria arrived at our house clutching 3 dusty photo albums and a box of loose photographs. She was wearing jeans, something I'd never seen before, and her usual perfectly coiffed hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. I couldn't sleep last night, she admitted as we settled at the dining room table. I kept thinking about what you said, about choosing family. I found this letter. She pulled out a yellowed envelope with trembling hands. Lily and Lucas bounded into the room, excited to play detective with old family photos. To my surprise, Victoria didn't flinch or pull away when they crowded close to her chair. Is that you, Grandma? Lucas pointed to a faded photograph of a young girl in a formal dress. No, sweetheart, Victoria said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. That's your great-great-grandmother, Eleanor. And these, she pointed to the couple standing behind the girl, are the parents who chose her. Like how Mom and Dad chose us? Lily asked, her eyes wide. Victoria's hand shook as she touched the photograph. Yes, exactly like that. As we sorted through the photographs, Victoria began to share stories she'd heard growing up. Stories she dismissed or reinterpreted to fit her narrative of the Sullivan family's noble bloodline. Now, with the truth laid bare, these stories took on new meaning. Eleanor never talked about being adopted, Victoria said, showing us a wedding photograph. But she was always taking in strays, children, animals, anyone who needed help. I used to think it was beneath our family's dignity. She looked at the twins, who were carefully organizing photos by date. I was wrong about so many things. James came home from work to find us all on the floor, surrounded by photographs and eating pizza. Another first for Victoria, who usually insisted on proper meals at proper tables. "Mom," he said, clearly shocked by the scene. Victoria looked up, a piece of pepperoni pizza in her hand and Lily leaning against her shoulder. "James, dear, did you know your great-great-grandfather was rescued from an orphanage by a baker and his wife? There's a whole letter here about how they saw him on their way to church and couldn't bear to leave him behind." That evening, as Victoria prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Margaret, I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. I've been so focused on maintaining this image of our family that I couldn't see what family really means." I watched as she knelt down to hug the twins goodbye. A real hug, not the stiff, formal embraces she'd given before. "Perhaps," she said, standing up, "we could make this a regular thing. I have more boxes in the attic, and I'd love the children's help sorting through them." "We'd like that," I said, and meant it. As her car pulled away, James wrapped his arm around my waist. "I've never seen her like this," he said wonderingly. "What did you do to my mother?" I leaned against him, watching the twins wave goodbye. "I didn't do anything. I just showed her the truth about where she came from. Sometimes knowing your real history helps you understand who you are now." That night, as I tucked the twins into bed, Lily asked, "Mom, is Grandma going to be different now?" I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "I think Grandma is learning that different isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it takes a while for people to understand that families come in all shapes and sizes." "Like our family?" Lucas asked sleepily. "Exactly like our family," I answered, turning out the light. As I closed their door, I heard Victoria's words from the reunion echoing in my head. "They're not real grandchildren." How far we'd come in just a few weeks, from that harsh judgment to sharing pizza on the floor, surrounded by evidence that the Sullivan family had always been built on love rather than blood. But the biggest changes were still to come. 3 months after the reunion, Victoria called with an unexpected request. "I want to host Thanksgiving this year," she announced. "Not just for our immediate family, for everyone." "Everyone?" I asked, surprised. "Yes," she said firmly. "And I'd like your help with something special." That's how I found myself standing in Victoria's pristine living room on a crisp November morning, helping her transform the space into what she called a family history museum. We hung enlarged photographs of the Sullivan adoptions through the generations, each one telling a story of chosen family and love. The formal dining room, usually reserved for her crystal and fine china, now housed tables covered with old letters, documents, and family artifacts. But the centerpiece was something that made my heart catch when I first saw it: a massive family tree painted on canvas, with golden branches extending in all directions. "I hired an artist," Victoria explained, adjusting the lighting. "Look closely at the leaves. Each leaf contained a photograph, not just of blood relatives, but of every person who had ever been welcomed into the Sullivan family through marriage, adoption, or love." Near the bottom, in fresh paint, were Lily and Lucas's smiling faces. "It's not finished," Victoria said softly. "I left room for future additions. Family keeps growing after all." When the guests began arriving for Thanksgiving, they were greeted by this visual testament to the Sullivan family's true heritage. Victoria had invited everyone: distant cousins, family friends, even Eleanor's old neighbors who had stories to share. "Welcome to the Sullivan Family Heritage Celebration," Victoria announced once everyone had arrived. She was wearing a casual sweater instead of her usual formal attire, and her smile reached her eyes. "Today, we're not just celebrating Thanksgiving. We're celebrating every person who has chosen to be part of our family, and everyone our family has chosen in return." The twins, who had been vibrating with excitement all morning, led tours of the makeshift museum. They knew every story by heart now, thanks to countless afternoons spent with Victoria exploring family history. This is James O'Sullivan, Lucas told a group of cousins, pointing to an old photograph. He was adopted just like us, and he became a baker like his new dad. And this is great-great-grandma Eleanor, Lily added proudly. She started a children's home because she knew what it was like to need a family. I watched Victoria throughout the day, seeing how she beamed every time someone discovered a new connection or shared a forgotten story. The formal woman who had once been so concerned with bloodlines and noble heritage had been replaced by someone who understood that family was something you built, not something you were born into. During dinner, Victoria clinked her glass for attention. "I have an announcement," she said, standing. "I've been doing some thinking about Eleanor's legacy." She paused, looking around the table at all the faces, blood relatives, and chosen family alike. "I've decided to establish the Sullivan Family Foundation. We'll provide support for families going through the adoption process, helping them give children the same gift of family that James O'Sullivan and Eleanor received." The room erupted in applause. James squeezed my hand under the table, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Margaret," Victoria continued, turning to me, "I'd like you to help me run it. Your research skills and your heart for family, they're exactly what this foundation needs." I felt tears welling up in my own eyes. "I'd be honored," I managed to say. And she added with a smile, "I thought we could start by helping the Martinez family down the street. They're trying to adopt their foster children, and I hear they could use some support." Later that evening, as the gathering was winding down, I found Victoria sitting in her study, looking at the family tree. "You know," she said without turning around, "I spent so many years trying to prove we were special because of our bloodline. I never realized we were special because of this." She gestured to the photographs. "Because generation after generation, our family chose love over everything else." She turned to me then, her eyes bright. "Thank you, Margaret, for not giving up on me, for showing you what family really means." I hugged her, this woman who had once made me feel so unwelcome, and who now felt truly like a mother-in-law, like family. "Grandma," Lily called from the doorway. "Uncle Pete is telling the story of the Sullivan family circus performers. Come listen." Victoria laughed, a real, joyful laugh. "Did I tell you I found more documents about that?" Apparently, Eleanor's adopted parents met in the circus. As I watched her hurry off with Lily, I thought about how far we'd come. The woman who had once declared my children weren't real grandchildren was now their most enthusiastic champion, their keeper of family stories, their beloved grandmother in every way that mattered. James found me still standing in the study. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me. "Very," I replied, leaning into him. "Your mother asked me earlier if I'd help her organize an adoption support group at her country club." He chuckled. "From not real grandchildren to adoption advocate. Who would have thought?" "Sometimes," I said, watching through the doorway as Victoria sat with the twins, showing them old circus photos. "The best family stories are the ones that surprise us the most." "She's always late picking up the children, and look at how they're dressed. My son deserves better than her." My mother-in-law's voice carried across the school parking lot as she held court with her circle of PTA moms. I gripped my steering wheel tighter, watching through my car window as she gestured dramatically, perfectly timed for maximum effect. "My name is Emma Sullivan, and at 34, I never thought I'd be hiding in my car to avoid my mother-in-law's latest character assassination attempt. But here I was 5 minutes early for pickup, as always listening to Patricia Wilson tear down everything about my parenting. The worst part, my husband James was away on a month-long business trip, leaving me to deal with his mother's escalating campaign against me alone. "Did you hear she lets them eat store-bought snacks?" Patricia's voice dripped with disdain. "In my day, we made everything from scratch. These modern mothers just don't understand proper nutrition." I watched as the other mothers nodded sympathetically, completely buying into her performance. These were the same women who, until Patricia's arrival 3 months ago, had been my friends. We'd organized school bake sales together, arranged playdates, shared parenting tips. Now they looked at me like I was somehow failing my children. Patricia had moved to our town after her husband's passing, claiming she needed to be closer to family. What she really meant was she needed to be closer to my children, close enough to scrutinize every parenting decision I made. The bell rang, and I stepped out of my car, holding my head high as I walked past Patricia's group. My twins, Sophie and Lucas, burst out of the school doors. their faces lighting up when they saw me. Mommy. They ran toward me, backpacks bouncing. I hugged them tight, breathing in their familiar scent of crayons and playground dust. Grammy Pat. Lucas spotted Patricia approaching, and my heart sank as she swept in for her own hugs. "Oh, my darlings," she cooed, shooting me a pointed look. "I noticed you're wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Doesn't Mommy do laundry anymore?" I bit back a retort. The twins wore the same outfits because they were their designated art day clothes. Something Patricia would know if she'd bothered to read the school newsletter instead of just criticizing my choices. "Actually," Sophie piped up, "we have art class on Mondays and Tuesdays, so we wear our paint clothes. Ms. Martinez says it's smart planning." Patricia's smile tightened. "Well, I suppose that's one way to look at it. Though when your father was young, I always made sure he had fresh clothes every day, no matter what activities were planned." The drive home was tense, with Patricia following us in her car. She'd invited herself over for dinner, again claiming she needed to ensure the children were getting a proper meal. As I prepared dinner, organic chicken, roasted vegetables, and quinoa, though Patricia would surely find fault with it, I overheard her in the living room with the twins. "Doesn't Mommy ever help with your homework?" she asked, her voice carrying deliberately to the kitchen. "Mom always helps us," Lucas defended. "She checks our work every night and helps us practice spelling. But she's so busy with her phone all the time." Patricia pressed. "I've seen her at pickup, always texting." My hands shook as I chopped vegetables. That texting was me managing my successful freelance graphic design business, which allowed me to work flexible hours and be there for my children. But Patricia had already decided I was a distracted, modern mother more interested in social media than parenting. The next morning, I dropped the twins at school, only to be called into the principal's office. My stomach churned as I sat across from Principal Martinez, wondering what Patricia had done now. "Mrs. Sullivan," she began, her expression serious, "I've received some concerning reports about your children's home environment." My heart stopped. "What kind of reports?" "Several parents have expressed worry about the children's well-being. They've mentioned inadequate clothing, nutrition concerns, and claims of neglect." I felt the blood drain from my face. Let me guess. Patricia Wilson is behind these reports. Principal Martinez's expression remained neutral, but I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "We take all parent concerns seriously, regardless of their source." "Of course," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But I assume you've also observed Sophie and Lucas yourself. Their academic performance, their social interactions, their overall well-being." She nodded slowly. "That's actually why I called you in today. I've been reviewing their records, and I have some questions about their recent achievements." My heart sank further. Had Patricia's campaign actually convinced the school I was an unfit mother? "Mrs. Sullivan," Principal Martinez continued, "are you aware that Sophie's reading level is 2 grades above average? And that Lucas's recent science project was selected for the district showcase?" I blinked, confused by her tone. "Yes, we read together every night, and Lucas is passionate about science. We converted part of the garage into a learning space for their projects." A small smile appeared on Principal Martinez's face. "The reason I'm asking is that I've been documenting your children's progress since these concerns were raised. I have 3 months of detailed observations, academic records, and teacher reports." She pulled out a thick folder. "Would you be interested in reviewing this documentation with me? I think it tells a very different story than the one being spread around our school community." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Principal Martinez hadn't called me in to accuse me. She called me in to help. As we went through the folder, I saw page after page of positive reports. Sophie and Lucas's impressive academic progress, their strong social skills, their healthy lunch choices, their clean and weather-appropriate clothing, their happy dispositions. "Mrs. Sullivan," Principal Martinez said finally, "I want you to know that I'm planning to call a special PTA meeting next week. These unfounded accusations about your parenting are creating a toxic environment in our school community, and it needs to be addressed." I thought about Patricia's smug face, her daily attempts to undermine me, her constant criticism disguised as concern. "What exactly are you planning?" Principal Martinez's smile turned determined. "I believe it's time for everyone to see the actual evidence of your children's thriving development. Sometimes the best way to counter gossip is with facts." As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Patricia might have convinced everyone to doubt my parenting, but she hadn't counted on one thing: the quiet daily proof of my children's happiness and success. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Mom says you were called to the principal's office. Everything okay?" I smiled, thinking about Principal Martinez's folder of evidence. "Everything's fine," I replied. "In fact, I think things are about to get very interesting." The PTA meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Word spread quickly, and the usually half-empty meetings were suddenly the hottest ticket in town. Patricia had spent the week alternating between calling James to express her concerns and rallying her supporters among the other parents. I sat in the front row of the school auditorium, my hands folded calmly in my lap, while Patricia held court 3 rows behind me. I could hear her stage-whispered predictions about my imminent exposure as an unfit mother. "I just hope the children will be able to spend more time with their father after this," she said loudly enough for me to hear. "They need a proper parental figure." Principal Martinez walked to the podium, and the room fell silent. She carried the same thick folder I'd seen in her office, now accompanied by a laptop and projector. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We're here today to address some serious allegations that have been circulating about one of our parents. Rather than letting rumors persist, I believe it's time to look at the facts." Patricia shifted smugly in her seat. I remained still, watching as Principal Martinez pulled up the first slide. "These are Sophie and Lucas Sullivan's academic progress charts for the past 3 months. The graphs showed steady upward trends in every subject. As you can see, both children are excelling academically. Sophie's reading comprehension is particularly noteworthy." She clicked to the next slide. "This is Lucas's science project that won the district showcase. The judges were particularly impressed by the detailed research and hands-on experimentation, all conducted in the family's home laboratory." Photos appeared of the learning space I created in our garage, with its microscopes, educational posters, and carefully organized project materials. I heard murmurs of surprise from the parents. Moving on to the concerns about nutrition, Principal Martinez continued, pulling up images from the school's lunch monitoring system. "The Sullivan children consistently bring balanced, healthy lunches. Our school nutritionist has specifically commended their meal variety and portion sizing." Patricia's voice cut through the murmurs. "Anyone can pack a good lunch for show. What about their obvious signs of neglect?" Principal Martinez's expression remained professional, but I saw a glint in her eye. "I'm glad you brought that up, Mrs. Wilson. Let's discuss the children's overall well-being." She played a video compilation from school events showing Sophie and Lucas actively participating in class, playing with friends, and enthusiastically sharing their achievements. Their clothes were clean and appropriate, their smiles genuine, their interaction with me natural and loving. "These are not children showing signs of neglect," Principal Martinez stated firmly. "These are children who are thriving under attentive, thoughtful parenting." The room had grown very quiet. I could feel Patricia's supporters shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Furthermore, Principal Martinez added, "I have statements from all of Sophie and Lucas's teachers." She began reading excerpts praising their politeness, their enthusiasm for learning, and their strong support system at home. "Mrs. Sullivan has never missed a parent-teacher conference," their homeroom teacher's statement read. "She's actively involved in their education while encouraging independence and creativity." I finally turned to look at Patricia. Her face had lost its usual superior expression, replaced by something between shock and anger. The other parents were pointedly avoiding her gaze. In light of these facts, Principal Martinez concluded, "I want to make something very clear. This school does not tolerate bullying, not among students and not among parents. The spreading of malicious rumors stops today." As the meeting adjourned, several parents approached me, offering awkward apologies for believing Patricia's accusations. My former friends looked especially ashamed, remembering how quickly they turned against me. Patricia stood alone, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling around her. As I walked past, she grabbed my arm. "This isn't over," she hissed. "James will hear about how you orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate me." I gently removed her hand. "Actually, Patricia, James has already heard everything. I called him last night." Her face paled. "You what?" "He's been watching the whole meeting via video call," I said, holding up my phone where James's face appeared on screen. Would you like to speak with him? James's face on the phone screen was a mixture of anger and disappointment as he looked at his mother. Mom, we need to talk, he said, his voice firm. Patricia took an involuntary step backward, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. James, darling, you don't understand. I was only trying to protect the children, she stammered, but James cut her off. I've watched everything, Mom. The meeting, the evidence, and I've been getting reports from the neighbors about your behavior for weeks. I just didn't want to believe it. I excused myself, leaving Patricia to face her son's disappointment alone. Outside the auditorium, Sophie and Lucas were waiting with their after-school club supervisor. Their faces lit up when they saw me, completely unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. Mom, can we get ice cream? Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes. We finished all our homework in study club. Looking at their hopeful faces, I made a decision. You know what? Yes. Let's celebrate. At the ice cream parlor, my phone buzzed with messages from James. He was cutting his business trip short, coming home tomorrow instead of next week. We need to handle this as a family, his text read. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have seen this coming. That evening after the twins were asleep, I sat in our home office, reviewing the day's events. The learning space in the garage that Patricia had criticized as unnecessary showing off was visible through the window, fairy lights twinkling inside. I created that space because Sophie and Lucas loved learning, not to prove anything to anyone. James called just before midnight. Mom's staying at a hotel tonight, he said, sounding exhausted. She had a lot to say, but mostly excuses. I told her she needs professional help if she wants to remain part of our children's lives. How did she take that? I asked, though I could guess. About as well as you'd expect. She claims we're all against her, that she's being punished for caring too much. He sighed heavily. Emma, I'm so sorry I didn't stop this sooner. The next morning, James arrived home just as I was making breakfast. The twins launched themselves at him, chattering excitedly about their week. I watched him hug them, saw the realization in his eyes of how close his mother had come to damaging our family. Where's Grammy Pat? Lucas asked innocently. She usually comes for breakfast on Fridays. James knelt down to their level. Grammy Pat needs some time to herself for a while. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. Is it because she was mean to Mom? Sophie asked, surprising us both. We heard her saying bad things about Mom to other parents. Nothing gets past you two, does it? James smiled sadly. Yes, Grammy Pat hasn't been very nice lately, and she needs time to think about her behavior. Over the next few weeks, our family settled into a new rhythm. Patricia's absence was noticeable but peaceful. The PTA moms who had shunned me gradually returned, shamefaced and apologetic. Some even asked about volunteering in our garage learning space, impressed by what they'd seen in Principal Martinez's presentation. Principal Martinez became an unexpected ally, implementing new anti-bullying policies that extended to parent behavior. Your situation highlighted a gap in our community guidelines, she told me during a parent-teacher conference. We protect our children from bullying but sometimes forget that parents can be just as harmful. A month after the meeting, Patricia reached out through her therapist, requesting a supervised visit with the twins. James and I discussed it thoroughly before agreeing. She's still their grandmother, I said, surprising myself by advocating for her. If she's genuinely working on herself, maybe we owe her that chance. The visit was short and carefully monitored. Patricia was subdued, her usual criticisms notably absent. She brought the twins books about science and art, showing she actually paid attention to their interests rather than pushing her own agenda. Emma, she said as she was leaving, her voice quiet. I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting my grandchildren, but I was only protecting my own ego. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. Today, 6 months later, our family has found a new balance. Patricia's visits are still supervised but more relaxed. She's learning to be a grandmother rather than a critic, though she sometimes slips. When she does, James or I remind her gently but firmly of boundaries. The twins continue to thrive. Sophie's reading now 3 grades above level, and Lucas's latest science project won a state competition. Our garage learning space has become a hub for after-school study groups, with parents volunteering their time and expertise. Yesterday, I overheard Patricia telling a new school parent about her wonderful daughter-in-law who created an amazing learning environment for the children. The praise felt genuine, without her usual undercurrent of criticism. As I watched her interact with the twins later, showing genuine interest in their activities rather than looking for faults, I realized something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning or proving someone wrong. Sometimes it's about giving people the chance to become better versions of themselves. The evidence hadn't just changed everything, it had changed everyone, including Patricia herself. Selfish, that's what you are. Patricia's voice echoed through the dining room as she slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. My daughter is struggling to make ends meet, and here you are, sitting on a fortune like some dragon hoarding gold. I took another bite of my roast chicken, maintaining my composure despite my mother-in-law's outburst. My name is Olivia, and at 34, I was facing yet another family dinner turned interrogation about my inheritance. 3 months ago, my beloved Aunt Martha passed away, leaving me her entire estate. Martha had been more than an aunt. She was my mentor, my confidant, and the only person who truly understood me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. She raised me, supported my dreams, and taught me the value of hard work and independence. Patricia, I said calmly, setting down my fork, my inheritance is exactly that. Mine. Aunt Martha chose to leave it to me for reasons she made very clear in her will. My sister-in-law, Emma, Patricia's precious daughter, sniffled dramatically from across the table. It's just not fair. James and I can barely afford our apartment, and you're living in that big house all by yourself. James, my husband's brother, nodded in agreement. Think about family, Olivia. We're all supposed to help each other. I caught my husband Michael's eye. He gave me a subtle nod, squeezing my hand under the table. We discussed this moment extensively, knowing it would come eventually. Help each other. I repeated, my voice steady. Like when Emma borrowed my car last year and returned it with a dented fender, refusing to pay for repairs. Or when James asked for a small loan of $5,000 and ghosted us for 3 months. Patricia's face reddened. That's different. They were going through tough times. They're always going through tough times, I replied, and whose fault is that? Emma quit 3 jobs in the past year because they were beneath her. James spent his savings on a luxury car he couldn't afford. How dare you judge my children? Patricia spat. Just because your aunt spoiled you. My aunt taught me responsibility, I interrupted, standing up. Something you clearly failed to teach your kids. The room fell silent. Michael stood beside me, his presence supportive but letting me fight my own battle. Patricia looked like she might explode, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. You ungrateful little, she started, but I cut her off again. You want to know what I'm doing with my inheritance? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photos. Take a look. I placed my phone on the table, sliding it toward them. The screen showed construction plans, blueprints, and photos of a building being renovated. What's this supposed to be? Emma asked, her nose wrinkling in confusion. This, I said, is the youth center I'm building in Aunt Martha's name. A place where kids who've lost their parents, like I did, can find support, education, and guidance. The kind of place that helped me become the selfish person you see today. Patricia scoffed, but I noticed her confidence wavering. You're lying. You're just saying this to make yourself look good. I smiled, pulling out a folder from my bag. The groundbreaking ceremony is next week. These are your invitations. Come see for yourselves what I'm doing with my hoarded fortune. Emma grabbed the invitation, her eyes widening as she read. This is in the paper. There's going to be press coverage. Of course, I replied. It's the largest youth center in the county. Aunt Martha's inheritance isn't just money, it's a legacy. And I'm honoring it the way she would have wanted. Patricia sat there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. Her perfect narrative of me as the selfish daughter-in-law was crumbling before her eyes. But, James stammered, but what about helping family? I looked him straight in the eye. I am helping family. I'm helping kids who need it most, just like I once did. And I'm teaching your children an important lesson about responsibility and giving back to the community. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael finally spoke up, his voice filled with pride. The center will also offer financial literacy classes for young adults. You're both welcome to attend. Emma's face flushed red, while James suddenly became very interested in his plate. Patricia sat there, fuming but speechless for the first time since I'd known her. As I gathered my things to leave, I turned back to them one last time. You know what the funny thing is? If you bothered to ask me about my plans instead of just demanding money, you might have learned something. Aunt Martha always said that true wealth isn't about how much you have, it's about what you do with it. Walking out of that dining room, I felt lighter than I had in months. Patricia's voice carried behind me, already spinning this to her advantage. Well, I always said we should do more charity work. But it didn't matter. They'd all see the truth soon enough. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning of my plans. Aunt Martha had taught me well, and I was about to show them exactly what selfish looked like. The day of the groundbreaking ceremony arrived bright and clear. I stood at the podium, looking out over the gathered crowd. Local media, community leaders, and dozens of excited families filled the rows of chairs we'd set up on the construction site. In the back row, I spotted Patricia, Emma, and James, dressed in their Sunday best, clearly hoping to be noticed by the news cameras. Michael squeezed my shoulder supportively as I began my speech. When I was 12 years old, I lost my parents. I started, my voice clear and strong. I was scared, alone, and didn't know what the future held. But two things saved me, my Aunt Martha and the community center where she volunteered. Today, we're not just breaking ground on a building. We're laying the foundation for hope. As I spoke, I could see Patricia shifting uncomfortably in her seat. She'd arrived early, trying to tell reporters she was instrumental in developing this project. Unfortunately for her, the project director had quickly set the record straight. The Martha Sullivan Youth Center will offer after-school programs, counseling services, career guidance, and yes, I paused, looking directly at Emma and James, financial management courses for young adults starting their careers. The ceremony proceeded perfectly. The mayor spoke about community investment, local business leaders praised the initiative, and several teenagers from the existing youth program shared their stories. Throughout it all, I could see my in-laws growing increasingly agitated as they realized they couldn't claim any part of this success. After the formal ceremonies, during the reception, Emma cornered me by the refreshment table. "You must feel so proud of yourself," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Making us look bad in front of everyone." I poured myself some punch, maintaining my composure. "Actually, Emma, I do feel proud. But not for the reasons you think. Did you know this center will offer free childcare for single parents attending college classes?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Yes. The kind of support that might help someone finish their degree instead of dropping out 3 times. I watched as my words hit home. Emma had quit college repeatedly, always blaming circumstances rather than her choices. That's not fair," she stammered. "You know I had my reasons." "Everyone has reasons, Emma. Some people just choose to find solutions instead of excuses." James approached next, looking uncomfortable in his ill-fitting suit. "Hey Olivia, that part about financial counseling, is that really going to be free?" "Completely free," I confirmed, "including personal budget planning and debt management workshops. The first session starts next month if you're interested." He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing around to ensure no one could hear him. Could I maybe get more information about that? For the first time, I saw a glimmer of genuine interest in his eyes. "Of course, James. That's what family is for, right?" Patricia, however, wasn't done trying to salvage her reputation. I overheard her telling anyone who would listen about how she'd mentored me over the years, shaping me into the philanthropist I'd become. "Mrs. Sullivan was like a mother to Olivia," she told a reporter, "but I like to think I helped guide her too." That was the last straw. I walked over, smiling warmly for the camera. "Patricia, you're too modest. Why don't you tell them about your own charitable works?" The reporter turned to her eagerly. "Yes, Mrs. Harrison. What other community projects have you been involved in?" Patricia's face froze. "Well, I have always believed in." "Actually," I interjected smoothly, "Patricia has just inspired me to announce our next initiative. We'll be starting a volunteer program for retirees who want to mentor our youth. Would you be interested in signing up? We could really use your guidance." The reporter's eyes lit up, but Patricia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I'll have to check my schedule." "No pressure," I said cheerfully. "We'll need volunteers year-round. Though, of course, we do require a background check and references from previous volunteer work." Patricia excused herself quickly after that, practically dragging Emma and James away with her. Michael found me later, grinning from ear to ear. That was masterful, he said, wrapping an arm around my waist. Though I think my mother might have an aneurysm. I leaned into him, watching the families mingling, the kids already excited about the programs we'd offered. You know what, honey? For the first time since Aunt Martha passed, I feel like I'm truly honoring her memory. She'd be proud of you, he said softly, and not just because of the center. She'd be proud of how you handled everything with grace. I smiled, thinking of the next phase of our plans, the scholarship program, the job training initiatives, the mental health support services. Patricia might have called me selfish, but I was about to show them what real generosity looked like. As the sun set over the construction site, I couldn't help but feel grateful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above and creating something meaningful. Aunt Martha had taught me that too. 6 months after the groundbreaking ceremony, the Martha Sullivan Youth Center was thriving. What started as a building project had blossomed into something far more significant than anyone, especially my in-laws, had expected. I sat in my office reviewing the latest program statistics when my assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Harrison is here to see you," she said, trying to hide a knowing smile. To my surprise, it wasn't Patricia standing in the doorway, but Emma. She looked different, subdued, wearing simple business attire instead of her usual flashy outfits. "Can we talk?" she asked, fidgeting with her purse strap. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course." Emma sat down, taking a deep breath. "I've been attending the financial management classes here," she confessed, under a different name. I didn't want anyone to know. This was unexpected. "And how's that going?" "It's eye-opening," she admitted. I never realized how much money I was wasting, how many opportunities I'd thrown away. The counselor helped me create a budget, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually sticking to it. I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister-in-law. The entitled attitude was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like humility. "James has been coming too," she continued. "He's working with the debt counselor to refinance his car loan. And we're both learning a lot." "I'm glad to hear that," I said sincerely. Emma's eyes welled up. "I owe you an apology, Olivia. When Mom was ranting about the inheritance, I joined in because it was easier than admitting my own failures. But watching what you've built here, how many people you're helping. I get it now. I understand what Aunt Martha saw in you." Before I could respond, my assistant appeared again. "Sorry to interrupt, but the school group is here for their tour." I stood up, and Emma did too, wiping her eyes. "Would you like to join us?" I offered. "See what else we're doing here." She nodded, following me through the bustling halls. We passed the computer lab where coding classes were in session, the counseling rooms where grief support groups met, and a classroom where young entrepreneurs were learning to write business plans. "We're adding a daycare center next month," I explained as we walked, "and expanding the scholarship program to include trade schools." "Mom doesn't know what to say about all this," Emma admitted. "She keeps trying to find something to criticize, but it's hard when the local papers keep running stories about the center's success." I smiled. "And how's that working out for her?" "She's actually volunteering now," Emma said with a small laugh. "Not here, of course. Her pride won't allow that. But at the hospital. I think she's trying to prove she's just as charitable as you are." We stopped at the Career Resource Center, where James was meeting with a financial advisor. He waved awkwardly when he saw us, and I waved back. "You know," Emma said quietly, "I always thought inheritance was about money. But what Aunt Martha left you, it was more than that, wasn't it?" I nodded. She left me her values, her vision. The money was just a tool to bring that vision to life. As if on cue, a group of teenagers rushed past us, heading to their after-school program. Their laughter echoed through the halls, filling the space with exactly the kind of energy Aunt Martha would have loved. "I have a proposition for you," I said to Emma. "We're starting a mentorship program for young women interested in business. Would you be interested in sharing your story? Not just the success part, but the struggles too. Sometimes people learn more from hearing about mistakes than victories." Emma's eyes widened. "You trust me with that?" "Everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their story," I replied. "Aunt Martha taught me that." Later that evening, as Michael and I were leaving the center, we saw Patricia's car in the parking lot. She was sitting inside, watching the building, probably wrestling with her pride. "Should we invite her in?" Michael asked. I shook my head. She'll come in when she's ready. Some lessons take time to learn. 3 days later, Patricia showed up at my office. No dramatic entrance, no demands, just a quiet request to tour the facility. As I showed her around, she remained uncharacteristically silent. Finally, in front of the wall displaying Aunt Martha's photo and the center's mission statement, she spoke. You've done good here, Olivia. Better than any of us expected. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Patricia, it was revolutionary. Thank you, I said simply. Would you like to see the volunteer schedule? She nodded, and I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing people a better way, opening doors they didn't know existed, and giving them the chance to change their own stories. Aunt Martha would have approved. Oh, honey, it was just a small ceremony, not worth the 4-hour drive. My mother's laughter echoed through the phone, casual and dismissive, as if she were explaining why she skipped a routine dinner invitation rather than the most important day of my life. Besides, your sister needed help moving into her new apartment that weekend. You understand, right? I gripped my phone tighter, staring at the beautiful wedding photo on my desk. James and I had created a perfect intimate ceremony with just 30 of our closest friends and family. Well, almost family. The 2 empty seats in the front rows still haunted me. No, Mom, I don't understand, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. It was my wedding day. My father's voice joined in from the background, chuckling along with my mother. Hannah, sweetheart, when you have a proper wedding at the country club like your sister's planning, we'll be there front and center. But that little garden thing you did. Come on. Little garden thing. Those words hit me like a physical blow. We'd chosen the botanical gardens because James had proposed there, under the cherry blossoms. We'd spent months planning every detail, making it perfect despite our modest budget. But to them, it would never be enough. Well, I said, fighting to keep my voice from trembling. I just wanted to know why. Now I do. I hung up before they could hear the tears in my voice. James found me later that evening, curled up in our home office, looking through our wedding album. He sat beside me, his presence warm and comforting. They still don't get it, do they? He asked softly. I shook my head, tracing my finger over a photo of us exchanging vows. They never will. To them, everything I do is second-rate compared to Katie. Even my wedding day wasn't worth a 4-hour drive. It had always been this way. Katie was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When she got into state college, our parents threw a massive party. When I earned a full scholarship to medical school, they simply nodded and asked if I'd heard about Katie's new job as a real estate agent. You know what hurts the most? I said, looking up at James. They're lacking about it. Like missing their daughter's wedding is some kind of joke. James wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close. Their loss, he said firmly. Look at what they missed. He pointed to a photo of our first dance, the fairy lights twinkling above us, our faces glowing with joy. This was perfect. You're perfect. 5 years passed. I built a successful medical practice, specializing in pediatric care. James and I bought our dream house, traveled, and created a life filled with love and respect. My parents remained distant, showing up occasionally for obligatory holiday calls, always more interested in updating me about Katie's latest achievements than asking about my life. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. James and I were preparing dinner when my phone rang. Seeing my father's number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me made me answer. Anna? His voice was different, shaky, desperate. We need your help. I stirred the pasta sauce slowly, remembering their laughter from 5 years ago. Oh, it's bad. The investment. Everything's gone. The house, our savings. We didn't know who else to call. Katie's not answering her phone. Of course she wasn't. Katie had taken their money for years, promising huge returns on guaranteed investments. I'd warned them, but they'd laughed that off too. Oh, Anna, you don't understand business like your sister does. Everything's gone. I kept my voice neutral, even as my hand tightened around the wooden spoon. All of it. My mother's voice cracked in the background. We need help, Anna. We have nowhere else to go. I thought about those empty seats at my wedding, about years of dismissal and disappointment, about laughter when they should have shown remorse. Anna? my father prompted when I remained silent. Please, we're your parents. James caught my eye across the kitchen, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I took a deep breath, a small, ironic smile playing at my lips. Oh, I said, my voice light and casual, exactly the way my mother's had been 5 years ago. I don't know. Coming to help you. It's a 4-hour drive. Not sure if it's worth the trip. The silence on the other end was deafening. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes before my mother's voice cracked through the phone. Anna, please, this isn't like your wedding. This is serious. There it was. The confirmation that to them, my wedding day hadn't been serious. Just another event they could dismiss, another moment they could laugh off. You're right, Mom, I replied, my voice steady. This isn't like my wedding. This is about money, and suddenly, I'm worth the call. James moved closer, resting his hand on my shoulder in silent support. He knew every hurt, every dismissal, every moment they'd chosen Katie over me. He'd been there through it all, watching as they missed not just our wedding, but every milestone that followed. We don't have anywhere else to go, my father pleaded, his usual confident tone replaced by desperation. Katie's investments, they weren't what she promised. We lost everything. I stirred the pasta sauce mechanically, remembering the day 2 years ago when I tried to warn them about Katie's investment opportunities. She'd been pushing them to liquidate their retirement accounts, promising triple returns through her exclusive real estate deals. Dad, I'd said during the rare family dinner, these returns she's promising, they're not realistic. I have colleagues who lost everything in similar schemes. They'd laugh then too. Oh, Anna, my mother had said, patting my hand condescendingly, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you understand business. Katie knows what she's doing. Now, as their world crumbled, they wanted me to be their safety net. The bank is foreclosing next week, my father continued. We thought, maybe we could stay with you and James for a while, just until we get back on our feet. I looked around our home, the one James and I had worked so hard to build. The house we'd bought without any help from family, the life we created despite their absence. You know what I remember most about my wedding day? I asked, changing the subject abruptly, looking at those empty seats in the front row. Everyone asking where my parents were, having to smile and explain that you were busy helping Katie move. Anna, that was 5 years ago, my mother interjected. Can't you let it go? Let it go. I felt a laugh bubble up, not unlike their dismissive chuckles from years past. Like you let go of every school play you missed for Katie's dance recitals, every achievement you dismissed because Katie had something more important happening. James squeezed my shoulder gently. He knew where this was going, knew I needed to say these words. When I got into medical school with a full scholarship, you didn't even come to the acceptance ceremony. You were at Katie's open house showing. When I graduated top of my class, you sent a card because Katie had a spa weekend planned for you. We're sorry, my father said quietly. We know we've made mistakes. No, I replied, you're not sorry about the mistakes. You're sorry you need something from me now. There's a difference. The line went quiet again. I could hear my mother's muffled sobs in the background, my father's heavy breathing. For the first time in my life, they were listening to me. Anna, my father started again. What do you want us to say? I thought about that question. What do I want them to say? What words could possibly make up for years of neglect, of choosing Katie, of laughing off my pain? I don't want you to say anything, I finally answered. I want you to understand how it feels. To need someone and have them laugh it off as unimportant. To have your pain dismissed as not worth the effort. I could feel James watching me, could see the pride in his eyes. He'd watched me grow from the person who desperately sought their approval to someone who knew her own worth. We do understand, my mother whispered. We understand now. But did they? Or were they just saying what they thought I wanted to hear because they needed something from me? I'll think about it, I said finally. I'll call you back tomorrow. Before they could respond, I ended the call, placing my phone face down on the counter. James immediately pulled me into a hug, and I let myself sink into his embrace. You okay? He asked softly. No, I admitted. But I will be. We stood there in our kitchen, the pasta sauce now forgotten on the stove. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across our garden. The one we planted together, much like the garden where we'd exchanged our vows. You don't owe them anything, James reminded me gently. I know, I replied. But what I decide to do next, it needs to be about who I am, not who they are. The question was, who exactly did I want to be? The next morning, I sat in my office at the pediatric clinic, absently scrolling through old family photos on my phone. There weren't many. Each one seemed to feature Katie front and center, with me somewhere in the background, trying to squeeze into the frame of my own family's attention. During my lunch break, I called Grace, my closest friend and the one who had helped arrange those beautiful flowers at my wedding, the ones my parents never saw. They have some nerve, Grace said after I explained the situation. But the real question is, what do you want to do? I sighed, looking at the photo on my desk of James and me on our wedding day. Part of me wants to laugh and hang up, just like they did to me all those years. But another part wants to be better than them, Grace finished. Because that's who you are, Anna. She was right. Despite everything, I built my life around helping others. My pediatric practice wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Every day, I worked with children and families, healing not just bodies but sometimes hearts too. After my shift, I drove home the long way, passing by the botanical gardens where James and I had married. The cherry blossoms were in bloom again, just like that day. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there, thinking. When I finally got home, James was waiting. One look at my face and he knew I'd made a decision. I'm going to help them, I said quietly, but on my terms. The next morning, I called my parents. I found you an apartment, I said without preamble when my father answered. It's small but clean and safe. It's near my clinic and the rent is reasonable. I'll pay the first 3 months. The silence on the other end was heavy. They'd been expecting to move into our spacious home, I knew, to be taken care of completely. An apartment? My mother's voice quavered. But we thought. You thought you'd move in with us, I finished. No, that's not happening. But I'm offering you a chance to rebuild, something you never offered me. How are we supposed to afford rent after 3 months? My father asked, his voice tight. The clinic where I work needs administrative staff. It's not glamorous, and it's not the country club life you're used to, but it's honest work. Both positions are yours if you want them. More silence. I could almost hear them processing this. The successful daughter they'd dismissed for years was now offering them a lifeline, but not the one they'd expected. Why? My father finally asked. Why help us at all? I thought about Grace's words about being better than them. Because I want you to understand something. Success isn't about fancy houses or country club memberships. It's about building something real, something meaningful. That's what my little garden wedding was about. That's what my whole life has been about. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. Anna. The apartment is available next week, I continued. The jobs start the Monday after. Take them or don't. It's your choice. But this is the only offer I'm making. That weekend, James and I drove to their soon-to-be foreclosed house to help them pack. The country club photos were gone from the walls, replaced by squares of unfaded wallpaper. Katie's Realtor Awards still sat on the mantel, now just painful reminders of their misplaced trust. As we loaded boxes into our car, my mother touched my arm. Your wedding, she said softly. The photos I saw. It was beautiful. Yes, I replied simply. It was. We should have been there. Yes, I said again. You should have. 2 months later, my parents had settled into their new life. The adjustment wasn't easy. I often heard my mother on her breaks at the clinic, crying in the bathroom. My father's hands, unused to filing and organizing, developed paper cuts and calluses. But slowly, something changed. They started seeing patients differently, not as social connections or status symbols, but as people. They watched me work, finally understanding what I built. The laughter I heard from them now was different, humbler, warmer, real. One evening, they invited James and me to dinner at their small apartment. No crystal glasses or fine china, just takeout containers and paper plates. On their wall hung a single photo, our wedding picture, the one that had sat on my desk all these years. We don't deserve your help, my father said, looking at the photo. We know that now. No, I agree, you don't. But this isn't about what you deserve. It's about who I choose to be. My mother wiped her eyes. We're proud of you, Anna. We should have said that years ago. I looked at James, who smiled and squeezed my hand. Then I looked at my parents, really looked at them. They were changed, humbled, but also more human than they'd ever been. I know, I said softly. Better late than never. And this time, when laughter filled the room, it was genuine, shared, and healing.